Out of all of the languages that we sing in, I find that French is the one that has the most differences between how we speak it and the rules of lyric diction.
Yes, there are a few things that tend to be quite different. Mainly for me, the thing that seems to be coming back a lot is the fact that in the spoken language, we seem to have lost a lot of the open e vowels and replaced them with closed a vowels in casual conversation. In lyric diction, however, it's important to know that some of those words that you would speak with a closed a should really be sung with an open e. And the difficulty there is that very often in the dictionary, you will find IPA transcriptions that reflect the spoken language and not the lyric diction. The most useful and the most frequent example of this is the articles, the plural articles in French. Les, mes, des, c'est, tes.
Exactly, and as the word for this one comes up a lot.
It's very common, and I usually refer to them as the plural articles, but they're, in some cases they're actually also plural pronouns, but we don't have to be that specific here. So all these les, des, tes, these small words that are very ubiquitous in spoken French will tend to be closed a. But when we sing them, the proper way of actually pronouncing this is with an open e. And I find that it's actually better vocally to go that route. It's a more open vowel, it's a nice sound, and I always encourage singers to go there. Now, this being said, if someone sings a closed A on these, it will not sound un-French per se. It will still be understood. It will still sound right, but it's not as appropriate for singing in lyric diction, I
Well,
would
and
think.
especially when we get into some of the older repertoire or things that feel more stylized because the time period should sound more stylized. I think the best example I ever saw was in the text for Clair de Lune at the end, where there are so many open es and they're interspersed with the word les all over the place.
That's the very end of Debussy's Clair de Lune on Paul Verlaine's famous poem, qui fait rêver les oiseaux dans les arbres et sangloter d'extase les jets d'eau, les grands jets d'eau sveltes parmi les marbres. And as you said, we have a lot of les in there, and they're all sort of interspersed with these more open vowels. So it makes much more sense to actually go for the open e. My other big, I wouldn't say pet peeve, but almost, is this idea that everything has to be harmonized to what we do in the spoken language. And if we do that too much, then we lose a lot of the variety of sounds that can occur in French. And when we're dealing with this kind of really refined poetry where sonority and the sounds of the language are very important, I think it's always good to go with what the sounds are supposed to be.
Exactly. As you said, this works for any of these plural articles. So we have mes and ces.
Yes, absolutely. So, for instance, there are a few famous aria titles where this happens with the other articles. From Faust, avant de quitter ces lieux, where we have the ces, that should be also an open e instead of ces lieux with the closed a.
And
Uh,
Schiavel's aria too in that same opera.
yeah, exactly. Faites-lui mes aveux, and not faites-lui mes aveux. The open
Exactly.
e is better there.
We often get the topic of vocalic harmonization, and I know that we do have a diction tip already on vocalic harmonization. What would happen to this if it's followed by a closed a vowel?
Well, I think this may be the only case where I would recommend sometimes to use the closed A for these articles is if they are followed by a closed A in the next word. For instance, in the aria À lève-toi soleil, the second part of that verse is Fais pâlir les étoiles. And here it might be advisable to actually go with the closed A for the les because it's followed by the closed A of étoile. So instead of les étoiles, you might be advised to sing les étoiles.
But in general,
But in general, I would just keep them open. This configuration here with the article followed by the closed A is not the most common occurrence. Most of the time, you should stick to the open A for sure.